My name is Maeve, and I am the AV Events Manager. So I work closely with Lila. It's nice to see you all directly in Zoom. I'm just going to go ahead and jump in. So before I get into a lot of specifics about how AV suggests that you use Zoom for classroom settings, I just want to state very clearly that we have already set up all of your coursework's Zoom courses according to your class schedule. So you don't need to worry about setting those up. And if you log into your coursework's account, you'll see in the Zoom folder that everything is already set up and scheduled and ready to go. So this training is really to help you navigate Zoom for sort of extracurricular sort of classroom meetings that you want to set up or meetings and whatnot, and just communicate the best practices. We have set up your classes to automatically record, and they should be automatically recording to the cloud unless you have specifically gone into your settings and changed that. So if you haven't changed any of your Zoom settings, then just assume that all of your classes that we set up for you are automatically recording to your cloud. You can look at our GSAPP site. We have a ton of resources up on there now. I don't know if anyone's gotten a chance to look. This link will take you to the hybrid pedagogy page, and you can get to the AV page from there. And all of the resources are there that you need. CTL has also really robust tutorials that you can check out. So I just put the link there for your reference. And this PDF is going to be available to you guys in the chat. So you'll have like the links to click on yourself and reference. Okay, so I'm just going to dive right into the Zoom settings for classes. We're going to go over security settings that are ideal for classroom settings. These are different than event settings, and also how to schedule a class. So first and foremost, security. We recommend that you do not use a waiting room for your classroom. It just allows for students to join before you necessarily join and sort of have a community discussion or whatever. The waiting room, if that's enabled, it means that you will have to individually admit students one by one into the classroom. So we suggest that you do not enable that, unless of course you have a specific reason that you want to. Do not enable authenticated users. That means that people without Zoom accounts cannot join. A lot of your students will not have a Zoom account. So you want to make sure that this is not enabled so that all of your students, whether or not they have a Zoom account, can join your class. So in terms of passwords, we recommend that you enable all password protections. This just makes sure that no uninvited guests will come into your classroom, either on purpose or by mistake. You can send the password ID to your class in advance. So it really is a great way to keep everything under control. You want the host video, the participant video to be on. You can always turn your video off. Students can always turn their video off, but if those are not enabled, then they will never be able to turn their videos on. So if that's going to be a big part of your classroom workflow, you should really, really pay attention to keeping this enabled. Enable mute participants on entry so that anytime someone joins the class, there isn't like a huge raucous coming from their side. And this last one, join before host, again, allows students to join the meeting before you do. So if you're running late, people can join, they can start sort of mingling, having conversation before you actually get there. If this join before host is not enabled, that means that the meeting nobody will be able to enter the meeting until you enter the meeting. So the chat function is really up to you in terms of how you want to run your class, but we suggest that you allow the chat because it allows for communication in the event that someone's audio is not working, video is not working, you have a chat function to communicate. We suggest to prevent participants from saving the chat. You can obviously sort of tailor this to your needs and your workflow. We suggest keeping file transfer on. That way you can share files. You don't need to send things outside of the Zoom, an email and whatnot. Okay, so those are just the basic settings that you can set up, whether you're logging into Zoom, your desktop app, or on the web browser. Right now, I'm going to sort of turn our attention to using Zoom through Courseworks, which is really should be the main way that you're interacting with Zoom. Every faculty member has a Zoom Pro account. So if you're still not having the Pro access, then you need to log into your Lion Mail and make sure that you went through the process of basically initializing your Zoom Pro account. So you should have gotten an email from Zoom saying that your Pro account needs to be activated. CUIT's main Zoom page is the best reference that you'll have for all Zoom related questions, especially questions regarding your Zoom account. They're actually in charge of your Zoom account. We will always help you if you have any questions, but just know that you can find really quick answers if you reference this CUIT Zoom link. Once you're logged into your courseworks, you'll find the Zoom class sessions on your left-hand menu bar. It's usually towards the bottom. So that is basically your biggest, the easiest way to get to Zoom through courseworks. It'll take you to this page where you can see your upcoming meetings, which is where you'll see all of the scheduled meetings that AV has put together for you. Previous meetings, personal meeting room, and your cloud recordings. This is really important. This is where all your recordings are going to end up and live. The top blue button, schedule a new meeting, is if you want to schedule meetings outside of what AV has already set up for you. When you do schedule a new meeting, you click that button and it'll take you to this page. It'll autofill your course that you're in, and then you will sort of fill everything out as you see fit. Whether it's a recurring meeting, really pay attention to this. If you want to set up alternate recurring meetings, make sure that that is clicked. Again, this is just going through some of the settings. Make sure that the passcode is enabled. Again, video, host, and participant need to be on. Enable join before host, and mute participants upon entry. So this is all the same settings that I showed you before. This is just through the Courseworks web page. So it looks a little bit different, but all of the main recommended settings are the same.
May I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Sure.
This has to be done only through Courseworks, not Canvas, I take it.
Canvas is Courseworks.
Oh, so it's the identical menu.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, those are synonymous.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, so, and then remember to save your new meeting. Signing in through Courseworks and setting up all your meetings through Courseworks is how we recommend you schedule new meetings, but you can also use Zoom on your desktop application. I'm sure almost everyone probably has Zoom downloaded on their laptop, iPad, maybe even iPhone, smartphone. So I'm just going to quickly show you that everything I just showed you, you can also do through the desktop app. This is what the login should look like if you're not already logged in on your desktop. CUIT suggests that you sign in with this called SSO. That means you're going to click on this and put in Columbia's domain name. You can actually also sign in through Google if you're already connected to your LionMail account. You can also type in your Columbia email and uni password. So those are three synonymous ways to sign in. CUIT suggests that you use SSO. So the Zoom window opens up, and very simply, easily schedule a meeting by clicking on schedule. Join meeting. I think most people are familiar with this interface, so I'm not going to belabor the point. The third way you can interact with Zoom is sign in on the web. So not through Canvas, not through your desktop app, but you can actually type in this URL, and it's essentially going to take you through the LionMail sign in anyway. So those are the three options that you have. We suggest that you always use Zoom through Canvas. So the key functions in Zoom, I think most people are probably aware since some people have been teaching. I'm not sure if this is some people's first time teaching with Zoom, but the key functions are sharing your screen, using a whiteboard, and breakout rooms. There are many more, functions, but these are the key resources. So on the bottom of your Zoom screen, you have your main menu, and the most prominent green button is Share Screen. That's where you're going to go to both share your desktop or to share a whiteboard and any other application that you might have open. So a PowerPoint, PDF. We recommend that if you're sharing a PowerPoint or PDF, not to share your entire desktop, because that's going to show your whole desktop to your entire class, and it's going to be set on the record. So if you want to be more private, definitely choose, as you can see on this screen, you see the Slack, application. I don't have a PDF or PowerPoint open right now, but you'll have the option of anything that's open on your screen.
I have a question here about the whiteboard usage. I don't have any examples of where a whiteboard has been used effectively in a course personally, but I'm going to post more information about it. I know that it is included in the IT training. Whiteboard, honestly, this is an item that you're going to use in very specific cases in your teaching, but it's not a setting that is frequently used, in my opinion, unless you're trying to do very specific types of assignments. I can get some more information about that. Let me just run to the Zoom training page really quickly, and I'll also drop a link to that.
Breakout rooms are all the way to the right on the bottom panel on your Zoom screen. This is really key to having small group discussions during class. It's very simple. You just click on that button and you choose how many rooms you want. You can either automatically or manually assign people. Once you decide how many rooms you want, create breakout rooms, and this bottom window will come up with more options. We highly recommend that you allow participants to return to the main session at any time. That means that they can just come back and wait for everyone else to finish their discussion sessions. They're not trapped in like a small breakout room. And we also suggest putting a countdown of 15 seconds so that students know that they have a certain amount of time to wrap up their discussions before they're going to automatically be pushed back to the main discussion. So those are the basic settings and functions in Zoom that we wanted to go over.
Can I ask a question about the breakout rooms?
Yes.
I don't have anything all the way to the right on my screen. Do you only have it if you're the host?
That's right. You only have it if you're the host. So
okay,
no one
got it.
attending the event can see exactly those navigation settings.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. All of these functions and settings that I'm showing you right now will only be available to the host or the co-host. So it's really important that if you are relying on a TA for help or to actually run your classes, that you're designating them as a co-host so that they have access to all of these controls. Okay, something very, very important to know is that all of the cloud recordings have a 30-day storage limit. So they'll live on your Canvas Zoom recordings folder for 30 days. So it's imperative that you download all of your recordings and archive them. Otherwise, they're going to be lost. And there's nothing that AV can do about that. It's a Zoom limitation, unfortunately. As I showed you before, cloud recordings are in your Canvas Zoom folder. It's the rightmost tab. Here's an example of a recording. It'll be labeled as the course name. And the way to download it is to just click on the course name, and this window will come up and it'll give you the option to download the video.
Quick question, where you download it to Canvas or to your desktop?
You're downloading it locally to your desktop.
Thank you. We
suggest that you use modules. Some of you might be familiar with modules. Some of you might not be, but you can always download the videos and then re-upload them as modules where they'll be safe and stay on Canvas for as long as you want them to. So you can either upload them to the modules, but we really suggest that you start a Google Drive folder to archive all of your recordings. You all have access to Google Drive since you have Lionmail accounts through Columbia University. So if you need help figuring that out, please reach out to us. But we suggest that you create a folder labeled with this template, semester, year, and then underscore the name of your class. And that way you have all of your recordings safe and archived. I'm going to sort of gloss over the recording a little bit. We have more in-depth tutorials on this on the GSAPP AV webpage. But if you are recording locally to your computer, let me just first say that the CUIT Zoom main page has a link to recording and has very, very clear step-by-step instructions if you're still confused about the difference. If you do record locally to your laptop, once you end the meeting, that is when you will be able to decide where to save the recording. So some people kind of freak out sometimes because they are not sure where the video has been saved. but they haven't ended the meeting. So the Zoom meeting needs to end first. Then you will be prompted to save the video to a specific folder of your choice. You need to ensure that the local recording setting is enabled in your account. Otherwise, when you start a meeting, it's not going to be available as an option. If you want a TA to locally record to their computer, you need to make sure that you've assigned them as a co-host.
Yeah, I have a question. You said they can be the co-host, but they can't have access to faculty courseworks. On a previous slide, it said that.
So a co-host is particular to Zoom and a Zoom meeting. They are not going to have access to your Canvas account unless you give them your login information, which we don't particularly recommend. And that's obviously up to you. So giving someone co-host control is just for that particular meeting to sort of control what's happening in that meeting. Okay. Even though it's linked, the recording is linked to your Canvas, they don't actually have any access to your Canvas account.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so in terms of modules, again, this can get very, very complicated and in-depth. There's a lot of things you can do here. So I'm just going to sort of go through the basics of how we recommend using it. Some faculty members have asked about recording lectures in advance and uploading them to Courseworks for their students to watch, as opposed to in addition to having live meetings. So modules is the way to do that. Modules lets you track student activity and also look at analytics. So that's really important. If you upload anything anywhere else, you have sort of limited control and viewing of student activity. So definitely use modules if you plan on pre-recording lectures. You will also find modules in the left-hand menu when you log into Canvas. It should be high up to the top, but it's very clear, straightforward. You click on module, you add the assignment. You name it appropriately, then you're prompted to add the media, and then you add the module. It's 3 very simple steps, very easy way to upload video media, audio media, and be able to track your students' interaction and engagement.
Maeve, do you know what the limits are to the types of files that you can assign in the modules portion? Like, could you, for example, upload a PDF?
Pretty much every file type is acceptable. There are some video files that are not acceptable, but as long as you're, using Zoom or QuickTime or any sort of normal application to record your videos, you should be fine. If you have any issues uploading, just contact us.
Great, thank you.
Oh, but I should mention that there is a limit of 100 modules before the modules start to be glitchy, apparently. So I don't really foresee people having more than 100 modules, but if you do plan on having a lot of content uploaded, please, contact us. We'll keep an eye on it.
This is actually a really important question within Courseworks and for the videos of lectures, Maeve. If you are giving a lecture and it's live in a Zoom meeting in Courseworks, the recording of that video will only be in your cloud as a faculty member. And so in order to share that lecture, it does need to be shared as a module. So you will be required to download the video from the cloud and then re-upload it as a module for all of the students to be able to see it afterwards or later.
Correct. If you do use the Google Drive as your backup archive for these recordings, you could also share those files directly with your students, sort of outside of your Courseworks account, so that you're not uploading and downloading and uploading again, but that's entirely up to you.
There's a few more questions about modules, Maeve, in the chat that just appeared that you might want to.
Yeah. So sending links to modules. Modules are really sort of assignments that you create. So you can definitely have links as assignments. In terms of can students send files to modules, I don't know if there's an interactive portion of modules, but I believe that is possible. I'm going to have to look in to see what kind of tutorials CUIT has. They have very in-depth tutorials on how to very specifically create modules and tailor your Canvas for what you need. So we'll get you the link to that. Okay, that's it for me. I'm going to pass it on to Lila.
Great. So I will get started. This is a place where some of our advice diverges a little bit. And so what I would like to cover for you are events where Zoom meetings where the meeting ID may be shared. So for example, if you've invited guests or if you're using Zoom for meetings with students that are outside of courseworks, places where the meeting ID might have been shared with someone, the settings are slightly different. And so there are slightly different recommendations for how to maintain your account for this. I'll also go over how whiteboards are used during this session. For meetings that are not preset in courseworks, we do recommend that you use a waiting room. This will allow you to sort of be ready and set up before people can join. Again, we recommend that you allow people who are non-authenticated users to join meetings. This means that someone will not need to create an account to join your meeting. So for example, if you were going to have a meeting with a friend and they did not have a Zoom account, they wouldn't be required to make one. Sharing an annotation. So this is actually quite important. You may have heard early in the spring when Zoom sort of was taking over, there was a term called Zoom bombing, when someone comes and attends your meeting and vandalizes the screen. They're doing that using the annotation setting. So what that means is Zoom is designed to be used collaboratively. So a team working on a project. If someone is speaking and someone else who's in the meeting wants to highlight something that they're doing, they might use the annotation feature to draw on it. This can be used to draw incendiary images or to write things that you do not want to see. So I recommend in general when you're creating meetings and to maintain your account without the annotation and whiteboards being used. I also recommend making sure that people cannot share their entire desktop. So students and yourself, actually, in your account, it makes more sense for you to make it so that you cannot share your desktop. If you can share your desktop, then, for example, if you have iMessage attached to your computer and someone sends you a text message and it pops up on your screen, anything that pops up on your screen would also pop up on the share. So in my account, I actually have it so that it is not possible for me to accidentally share my entire desktop. I can only share individual files. Whiteboard is used, again, as like a screen drawing tool. Earlier, Maeve mentioned that it's a key feature. You may be using it if you, for example, if during class sessions, you might have used a chalkboard to draw something, then you might use whiteboard instead. This is something that is really specifically only is used for teaching, and so it should be disabled if you're primarily going to be using Zoom meetings that are not for teaching. This is also a diversion from the way that Zoom is used for teaching. I'm recommending that people, when you schedule a meeting, that the participant's video be off. The reason for this is that people may join your meeting consistently throughout that meeting, and if you're sharing your screen and giving a presentation, then those videos will pop up. If you'd like their videos to not be on automatically, then we recommend turning off this setting. Muting participants on entry is recommended for all meetings, including classes. Basically, what this does is it preferences someone's privacy when they're entering a meeting. So we've all gotten to the point now where we enter meetings, we join things, we're kind of doing lots of things on our computers all the time. We may be saying something to someone else when we enter a meeting, not realizing that our speaker would be on, and that can be disruptive to your classes and your meetings in general. So muting upon entry, but allowing people to unmute themselves, which I'll go over in a second, is a good plan. So this is the desktop app for where you can schedule meetings, and the settings that I've just discussed are here. Enabling join meeting before host and waiting room are sort of mutually exclusive. You can't have both. The waiting room makes it so that you have more control, and muting participants on entry is also here. The video settings are in a separate area. I always keep my video off until I'm sort of ready to join the meeting with video, but that is definitely up to you. Within the actual meeting itself, you'll see that there's a participants tab. Even if you are not the host, you should have a participants tab. You just won't have all of the settings that I'm going over here. You will be able to click on someone who is in the meeting and make them a co-host. Then henceforth, they will be able to have all of these controls that you will also have within that meeting. When you are using a waiting room, you'll again click on the participants menu to manage that, and there will be some settings here. You will be able to admit individuals. You can admit individuals. So for example, if you are already in the meeting and there are 1 or 2 people who you'd like to meet with in advance, you can admit them as individuals while leaving the rest of the people in the waiting room. If there are many people in the waiting room, there will be a button here that says admit all, and you can admit everyone using that. After you have admitted your guests and you need to close the waiting room, you will click on the more, which is down here in the bottom right. And you will need to uncheck enable waiting room. This will allow guests to enter the meeting at any time without you having to watch to check and see if they are here. It is also an option for you to lock your meeting. This means that, for example, if you are running a class and everyone who is in the class has joined, you can lock the meeting so that all of the guests are there, no one else can join. What will happen then is if someone loses their internet connection and they need to leave the meeting for some reason and then come back, they will not be able to rejoin until you unlock the meeting. And then also here are important settings allowing participants to unmute themselves. As you've noted during this training, we have allowed you to unmute yourself so that people could ask questions at any time. However, if you prefer not to be interrupted, you can check this here so that no one can unmute themselves unless you give them permission. This is also an important setting for those of you who have your pro accounts enabled. I think that it really improves the experience of being in a meeting so that if you are alone in the meeting in terms of having your camera on as you give presentations, this will improve the quality of your recordings. So everyone who has a pro account right now can click on themselves in the top menu of this meeting. They can click on the 3 dots and then you'll see a menu come up. So you can mute yourself, start your video. Hide all non-video participants will allow everyone who is in this meeting right now with you who does not have their camera on will disappear. So if you are giving a presentation and you're making a recording and you would prefer that everyone's faces all of those black squares not be included in the recording, this is the setting that allows you to do that. You can turn this on and off for every individual meeting. It's not something that you have to have. And also I just wanted to mention that gallery view is here so that if you wanted to see more than just the speaker, but everyone in the meeting, you can toggle between gallery view and speaker view. So these are some non-settings related recommendations that I just find really important. We mentioned that for your courses, all of them are automatically set to record to the cloud. If you are doing additional meetings in Zoom outside of your courses that you're scheduling, you can choose whether or not they are recorded, either to the cloud or to your desktop. I recommend that if you're having a meeting where information is being shared and some of your students might not be able to receive it at exactly that time that you record the meeting, obviously private meetings are, it's up to you whether or not you record them. It's important here to make sure that if you are recording the meeting, that you verbally let people who are in the meeting know that it is being recorded. And I've also suggested a filing system. So if you record locally to the computer, which Maeve has already covered, there will be a folder of Zoom exports. What is very important about this is that every single Zoom meeting that you record will automatically be in a folder by the name of that meeting, whatever meeting name you gave the meeting. But the objects within the folder are a record of the chat, if you've enabled that, an audio-only recording of the meeting, a playback. I actually don't even know what that file is for, but it's automatically in the folder every time. I've never needed it, so it's not been necessary to know what that file is for, and then a video. Every single one of those materials will be named with the same name, so Zoom 0. No matter how many meetings you host, it will always be Zoom 0. If you're like me, I can imagine a year from now looking for something and searching through hundreds of Zoom Zero videos. That is not convenient and it's not going to work. So I highly recommend making it a habit of renaming each of the files within those folder. Here's an example. I personally name things by their semester, by what course they're in, the people who are involved, and then the date. This is another important point that I just want to talk through. I know that for each of your courses, lots of people have expressed that they prefer, especially when teaching or presenting, that they want to see people's faces, because we all rely so much on body language and cues. Like, we want to see if people are paying attention, if they're interested. We want to see people's faces. What I think is important for everyone to understand is that if you are recording your lectures, for example, your lecture courses live, and the students are present during those recordings and their cameras are on, their likenesses are going to be recorded in those videos. So if you wanted to, for example, use the same lecture later in the semester or a semester later, the students' faces would be recorded in those recordings. So it definitely makes sense to ask people to turn off their cameras if you plan to use the lecture video further. Even though that means that you won't get as much sort of visual feedback from your students as you're lecturing, ultimately, for me, as a matter of privacy, I like to keep my camera off unless it is necessary for me to be visible as if I'm presenting. The last thing that I want to cover here is that it is possible to unmute all of your students at the same time in any meeting. It's possible to unmute everyone. I do not recommend using this setting. All of us, again, as I mentioned, we're very accustomed to being on Zoom meetings and to understand that we are muted, that no one can hear anything that we're saying. Someone might be taking a phone call in addition to the meeting that they're in. There's lots of multitasking happening. If you unmute everyone, I consider that an invasion of privacy, but it's a feature that always exists. So I just recommend staying away from that, and I just wanted to mention it. It's really something that if you're going to ask everyone to unmute, you should really be allowing each of them to make that decision for themselves. The other things that I wanted to mention that sort of maximize your equipment and your image quality. Lots of us have different rates of internet speeds. Our internet is better or worse. Our equipment that we're using, our computers, are better or worse. And these are some ways that you can really increase the fidelity of your videos and your call experience. So if you have the option to use Ethernet, if your computer is close enough to your Ethernet, your Wi-Fi router, there are Ethernet cables behind it. Your router almost definitely came with at least one Ethernet cable. It was probably only 6 feet long, so your computer would need to be quite close. You can purchase very long cables. I personally have a cable that is 100 feet long that goes from my living room all the way on the opposite side of my apartment to my bedroom so that I can have the best possible internet quality. It doesn't look great, but it is absolutely helpful. You can consider upgrading your Wi-Fi if it's a consistent issue that you're having trouble with the fidelity of your videos, especially your audio. And then also you can make as clear a path to your router as is possible. If your router is behind something because it's, you don't like the way that it looks because it's messy, that might be interrupting your quality. If you are having trouble with your internet quality and you're finding that your audio is interrupted, then you may want to make sure that everything else that is on your computer that is open is closed. If you are like me and you have many tabs of the internet open at once, hundreds of tabs at a time while I'm researching, each of those tabs is constantly refreshing and they're taking up some of your internet bandwidth. So if all of the other programs on your computer are closed, it will improve the quality of your fidelity on the call. Also, if someone is presenting, yourself or someone else, a student is presenting and their audio quality is very choppy and the video is a very low fidelity, asking them to turn off their video so that they're only transmitting their audio does usually improve the quality. Ultimately, it's important that people are heard, much less so than that they are seen. So this is something that can really help you. The other thing, and this is especially for coursework that includes the presentation of drawings, architectural drawings are incredibly large files. And so it may be worthwhile to ask your students if they're having trouble presenting in high fidelity, that they limit their images to 5 megabytes per image. And this will mean that they need to create a PDF of their presentation and then save it down so that it's a low resolution file. This can help with sort of the movement, like how fast the image loads onto the screen. And if saving down is not an option because you're going to be really zooming into the file in very fine detail, then they can break up into multiple files and just change the share page to page, which will allow them to really zoom into like incredibly high quality files. We understand that that was a ton of information. Some of you will have different sort of levels of understanding and comfort with Zoom. So we wanted to save as much time as possible for you to just ask questions. Okay, so I have a question about sharing video. And so this is, again, videos are very large files. So it's really important that you have the maximum fidelity within your internet connection to share a video properly. If you're finding that on a consistent basis, you are not able to share a video file with high enough fidelity for it to move quickly at its normal pace, what you may want to do if you do have a teacher's assistant for that course, you may want to find someone who has the best possible internet quality who's in the course and ask them to share the file. This is really sort of a collaborative system. Obviously, that is not a great answer, but if you find consistently that your internet quality is not good enough to share a video, you may just want to try to work with your students to see who that could better be shared by.
Can I ask a kind of not directly related question, which was covered in other sessions?
Sure.
The actual videoing of lectures, I was told that Panopto is a pain in the butt and it's much easier to do it outside of it. Is that a problem?
So recording in Zoom is definitely the easiest thing that you can do because it'll just upload directly to your cloud recordings. So it kind of cuts down on the number of steps that you have to take. So yes, AV recommends that you use Zoom to record.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And sorry, and just to follow up on Kate's question, so then you can pre-record part and then you've got that and you can play that during your lecture, right? And start it and stop it.
If you have pre-recorded a video, you can use Zoom to pre-record a video because it's a really easy interface to learn, or you can use another system and there are instructions for that. But if there's a video on your computer, then you can just play it via the share screen function.
Share screen, okay, thanks.
As any other item. So,
okay, so you pre-record it, you save it, then you open it up for share screen when you actually do the class.
Exactly.
Thank you, Shannon. Great.
I'd also like to point out that if you're going to pre-record your lecture and you're not having any in-class discussion, you can post that through modules and you don't necessarily have to do a live meeting because you can make it go visible to your students at a certain time.
Okay.
But if you are trying to incorporate a pre-recorded lecture into your live Zoom class that's already been scheduled, then yes, use the share screen function.
And then how do you do that module release thing?
It's in the settings. So if you go through, I just gave you the 3 sort of basic settings of modules, but if you follow that, those steps, you will find the options within there.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
Are there best practices for sound quality in terms of things like lapel mics or microphones? That's one question. The other one is the background. Does GSAPP have a background, like one of you is using a background right now that could be used as a consistent background so that, you know, there's a consistency across the board that could be shared? Or should we just do whatever we want to do?
Yes, so there are definitely some best practices for audio settings. I'll ask Maeve to go over those. But in terms of the background, I can share this file that I'm using, which is just a blue gradient with the GSAPP events logo or Columbia GSAPP logo on it. There are also lots of other sort of background options. You can use plain white or plain black. If you Google Zoom backgrounds, you're definitely going to be able to find like tons of different images that you could use. But I'm happy to provide to everyone, I'll add it to the chat now, some options for like GSAPP branded virtual backgrounds. However, it's absolutely not required that you use a GSAPP branded virtual background.
Great, thank you.
In terms of the audio best practices, we really recommend using headphones with like a microphone attachment. So like I'm using the Apple AirPods right now. Regular Apple headphones with the wires also work. They have a microphone attached, or any other kind of headphone microphone attachment is really ideal. I just shared a link in the chat, and this will take you to the GSAPP hybrid pedagogy webpage for faculty. We have a lot of links on that page that bring you to very detailed step-by-step sort of recommendations. If you want like a more sort of professional setup with like a microphone that sort of stands on your desk, if you don't want to sort of have anything in your ear or worry about that, they have suggestions about other setups. But we suggest sort of just like basic headphone microphone.
Great, thank you.
I'll also, just as an example, since I've not been wearing headphones throughout this entire time and I've been using my laptop microphone throughout this call, I have acquired my wired headphones. Which I've now put on. And you should notice that my audio quality has probably changed slightly since I'm using a microphone that is now closer to my face.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Sounds better.
Yeah, right. So you can tell, sorry that I was being rude and not using my headphones throughout this call. So I'll leave them on for the remainder of the call so that you can see that there's a real serious sound difference.
Okay, and then how does that compare, Shannon, with the wireless ones? The ones that Maeve has on?
You know, I think that probably in terms of the quality of the speaker, it's probably very similar. I just personally, I do actually, you know, I have a pair of AirPods, but this is the pair that I knew would connect instantly. Whereas if I had gone with the Bluetooth ones, I would have needed to, you know, go through the process of adding the Bluetooth to my laptop, but they're not currently connected.
And they're just the typical Apple ones, right?
Right, exactly. Both of us are using typical Apple headsets. One thing that I will say is if you were teaching a very long course and you think that your Apple AirPods may die during the conversation, so they may sort of like the batteries may run low and then, you know, one of them might turn off, you may end up with some changes. So if there's like a 3-hour lecture course, a wired or, you know, non-battery using set of headphones might be a better choice for that.
Right.
But again, that's really based on sort of like the battery there.
Good idea, thanks.
In terms of this question about changing audio settings when you're playing a video. So when you play a video, you are going to first share your screen. You're going to click that green button on the bottom of your menu. And the pop-up window that you should see on the very bottom left, there is something that says share computer sound, and you can check that off. That will ensure that the sound being shared to everyone in the meeting is coming from the video that you're about to share. That is very, very important. And then once you stop sharing the video, your audio will just automatically revert back to your headphone or your computer microphone.
Where is that again?
So it's hard for me to share my screen because I don't think you'll see it if I do, but let me just pull it up on the PDF.
But if you do share screen, right, then you say share computer sound?
Yeah, you can, if you click the share screen button, the green one, then you see that command.
Yeah, share computer sound.
Does everyone see it, or should I share my screen so you can get a
I
visual?
think it's one of those things that it's not going to actually show up on for us to see, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm going to show the PDF.
It works when
that
I just
have.
click on share screen. I can see the command, the option.
I can too. Yep.
Okay. Does anyone not see it? All right, I'll take that as a good to go.
So I just went to share screen and I created a screenshot. So I'm going to share that now for everyone. You can see here, this is a screenshot that I just took, which is the menu of everything that is on my computer. Got an exciting little preview to our fall 2020 poster design here. This little square in the bottom left is what is going to allow you to share with computer sound. This must be checked in order for the sound in your video to operate. Okay, so we're right at 1 o'clock. If there are no further questions, then we will go ahead and end. Again, I'm just going to drop this, the PDF for today's training into the chat one more time. And I am going to once again, how do I? Just really quickly, I just want to make sure that you guys all have the email address for us. So if you are emailing the AV team with a question about Zoom or about your CourseWorks integration, then you should email avrequest@arch.columbia.edu. My email address is also here. It's lc3173@columbia.edu. If you have a question about lectures or other things like events that you're integrating into your course, then I would be happy to answer them. But I just want to make sure that this information is here and available to you.